Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world without highways, without streetlights, without even the faint hum of a fridge in the background. Around you, the air is wide and raw, carrying the smell of dust and grass. The sun is just tipping over the horizon, and somewhere ahead, beyond the swaying savanna grass, a herd of antelope has passed in the night. Their hooves have left a story in the dirt, one that only the sharpest eyes can read. This is where your journey begins, and if you want to eat tonight, you better learn fast. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Post your location and local time down in the comments. I always love seeing how far this little bedtime campfire reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You crouch low, knees in the cool grit of the morning soil. The ground is a book, and every dent, scrape, and twist in it tells you something. A cracked twig to the left means a startled turn. A deep print here, weight shifted forward, means a burst of speed. The smell of disturbed earth still lingers. You're not just looking, you're listening with your eyes. Historians still argue whether these early trackers learned their skills by necessity alone, or whether there was something deeper, an instinct honed over hundreds of thousands of years, a natural-born GPS that modern humans can barely imagine. What's clear is that missing these signs could mean an empty belly, or becoming someone else's meal. The sun climbs higher, the shadows shortening. Your bare feet feel every shift in texture. Coarse sand turn into damp soil where the herd may have paused. You find a tuft of fur snagged on a thorn bush, pale and soft. A mainstream fact? Many prehistoric hunters used even this tiny clue to tell the health of the animal. Shedding fur could mean seasonal change, a stress reaction, or illness. You move forward, keeping your breathing low, eyes constantly flicking between ground and horizon. This isn't a sprint, it's chess with the land. One wrong move and your quarry bolts gone over a ridge. And the thing about running after an antelope, you might not stop for hours. You remember a quirky tidbit one of the older hunters told you: never follow the obvious path too closely. Prey animals are sneaky. They double back, cross rivers, even loop near predators to throw you off. Once, an elder swore that a gazelle led him straight past a sleeping lion, as if the creature had a sense of humor about it. The prints grow fresher, edges still crisp in the dust. Your heart lifts. You're close. But your stomach also tightens. Something feels off. A vulture circles lazily ahead. Maybe the herd stumbled into danger. Maybe danger stumbled into them. You pause at a muddy patch where the tracks scatter. You kneel, pressing your fingers into one print, feeling the coolness, the softness. Water must be nearby. That's your next move. Every hunter knows the water holes are both opportunity and risk. And here's where the reality bites. You're not the only predator reading these signs. Hyenas, lions, even other humans are drawn to the same clues. The difference? You don't have claws or fangs. You've got brains, persistence, and maybe a few stone tools if you're lucky. A sudden breeze lifts dust into your eyes. You blink and keep moving, reminding yourself this is the rhythm of survival. Find, follow, predict. This skill will be passed down hunter to hunter for thousands of years. Even now, in some parts of the world, there are people who can read the land like you read a text message. By midday, you've pieced together the puzzle. The herd passed through in the night, slowed to feed, then moved toward the water at dawn. Whether you catch them or not will depend on your patience, your reading of signs, and maybe a bit of luck from whatever unseen forces your people whisper to around the fire. And if you do find them, that's when the real test begins. But for now, you're still chasing ghosts in the dirt. Every footprint a sentence in a story that only the living can finish. You stop for a moment, crouching in the shade of a scraggly acacia, letting your breathing slow. The herd is still ahead somewhere, but you're not going to get far with just your bare hands and a dream. In your right palm, you feel the cool, reassuring weight of a chipped stone tool, rough edges biting lightly into your skin. It's not much to look at, just a flake broken from a larger rock. But in this age, it's the difference between coming back with food or coming back with a story nobody wants to hear. The thing about these early stone tools is that they were humanity's first real technological leap. Mainstream archaeology tells us they appeared over 2.5 million years ago, starting as simple choppers and flakes, each one made by knocking a core stone with a hammerstone until it split just right. A well-made flake could slice through hide, muscle, and sinew with surprising ease. You can feel the possibilities in your hand. It's more than a weapon. It's a promise. You turn the tool over, watching sunlight catch on the sharp edge. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you're thinking about how this little piece of rock has changed the rules. Without it, you'd be trying to wrestle dinner with your teeth, which, let's face it, would go badly for you. But with it, you can cut meat, scrape hides for clothing, or even shape wood into other tools. The tool itself is the start of a chain reaction. Historians still argue whether these skills spread mainly through observation or whether they were taught deliberately. One hunter showing another, guiding hands, choosing the right stone, the right strike. Either way, by the time you're born, the knowledge is already flowing through your community like blood through veins. A quirky fact drifts to mind. Some of the best tool-making stones were carried long distances, even traded between groups. Imagine that. Prehistoric people hauling around chunks of flint or obsidian the way modern folks guard their smartphones. In fact, certain volcanic glass edges were so sharp they could slice finer than modern surgical steel. Not bad for something pulled from the ground. You rise and keep moving, scanning for both tracks and stones. Sometimes the hunt is as much about preparation as pursuit. A better edge means a faster kill, and a faster kill means less chance of attracting unwanted attention from things with claws. Up ahead, you spot a scatter of bones, old, weathered, cracked by sun and scavengers. You kneel, studying them. They're not from your quarry, but they tell you something. This is a kill site. Predators like to return to familiar places. Maybe you can use that. You imagine the scene, firelight flickering on stone tools, meat roasting over embers, the air thick with the smell of smoke and fat. Even in this dangerous world, those moments are comfort. Your people will use every part of the kill, meat for food, hide for shelter, bone for more tools. Waste isn't an option. Every scrap is survival. You glance at your hands, remembering the first time you shaped a stone. Your mentor had made it look so easy. Chip, turn, chip, perfect edge. When you tried, your perfect edge looked more like a rock that had been in a bar fight. But practice has its way of reshaping not just stone, but you. The wind shifts, carrying with it a faint smell, musky, warm, animal. You pause, tilting your head, trying to place it. Could be your quarry. Could be something that hunts the same quarry. Either way, you tighten your grip on the tool. There's an old saying in your camp: a dull edge is a dead hunter. You check your blade by running it lightly across your fingertip. Not enough to cut, just enough to feel that sweet bite of sharpness. Satisfied, you slip it into the thong at your waist. As you walk, the savanna opens ahead of you, golden grass waving, heat beginning to shimmer in the distance. Every step reminds you of the strange truth of this life. Your tools may be simple, but the brain behind them is endlessly inventive. Somewhere out there, an antelope is grazing, unaware that a few shards of stone and a determined human are quietly rewriting the rules of the chase. The sun dips lower, and the world shifts into that strange half-light when everything looks sharper and more alive. Shadows stretch long over the savanna, and somewhere behind you, a chorus of insects starts up, clicking and buzzing like an orchestra tuning its strings. You adjust your grip on the torch in your hand, its resin-soaked end spitting and popping in the cooling air. Hunting in daylight is one thing. Hunting at night? That's a whole other gamble. Fire is your ally, but it's also your liability. Mainstream historical fact: our ancestors began controlling fire at least 400,000 years ago, and possibly much earlier. It was more than warmth and light. It was a tool for hunting. By waving flames, prehistoric people could drive animals toward prepared traps or ambush points, pushing them exactly where the hunters wanted them to go. It's the original crowd control. The tricky part? Animals aren't the only ones who fear fire. A flickering torch in the dark might keep hyenas at bay, but it also announces your position to any other predator with eyes to see. Historians still argue whether night hunting was common practice or more of a desperate last resort move when daylight hunts failed. Some point to charred bone remains near ancient kill sites as evidence. Others say that could just as easily be dinner leftovers rather than proof of a fire-assisted hunt. You and your group spread out in a loose arc, torches in hand. The plan is simple. Circle behind the small herd of antelope grazing at the edge of a thicket, then close in, using the flames to funnel them into a narrow path where spear throwers wait. You tread carefully. Every snapped twig is a warning to the prey. Your torchlight makes the grass glow in shifting patterns, the night alive with movement. A quirky tidbit you once overheard from an elder comes to mind. In certain regions, hunters would set slow-burning grass fires, not to catch the animals directly, but to force fresh green shoots to sprout in the coming weeks. Those tender shoots would lure grazing animals back to the same place, like bait set by time itself. It was farming without calling it farming, a patient hunter's trick. The wind carries the smell of smoke ahead of you. The antelope stir, their ears twitching like satellite dishes, scanning for danger. The trick now is timing. Push too soon, and they scatter in every direction. Push too late, and they slip away into the dark. You glance at the spear throwers waiting up ahead, their silhouettes barely visible against the last glow of twilight. Their spears rest ready in carved wooden hooks, the atlatls that will hurl them with deadly force. You feel the tension in the group. each person listening for that one signal, the sharp hiss from the lead hunter that means now. It comes, slicing through the insect chorus, and the line surges forward. Torches sway, shadows leap. The antelope break into a panicked run just as planned, funneling into the narrow gap. Spears fly, arcing briefly into firelight before disappearing into the dark with solid, meaty thuds. When it's over, the smell of singed grass and warm blood mingles in the air. You lower your torch, watching the last sparks drift into the night sky. There's relief, but also an unspoken awareness. Night hunts like this can go wrong fast. A misstep, a sudden gust, and you could end up as dinner instead of diner. Still, the torches work tonight. You'll eat. And as you walk back to camp under the watchful stars, you realize that controlling fire isn't just about surviving the dark. It's about bending the world just a little to your will. You wake the next morning with the stiffness of someone who slept on ground that has more rocks than soil. The smell of last night's smoke still clings to your hair. But today's hunt will be different. No circling with torches, no coaxing animals into narrow passes. Today, it's about precision. You reach for a spear, but not just any spear. This one has a carved notch at the base and a companion, the atlatl, a simple-looking wooden lever that fits snugly in your grip. Mainstream historical fact. Humans have been using spear throwers for at least 17,000 years, with evidence stretching back even further in some sites. This little invention multiplies the power of your throw, hurling a spear faster and farther than your arm alone ever could. You run your fingers along the polished wood, feeling the smoothness from countless hunts before yours. The spear shaft is straight and balanced, its point carefully sharpened from stone, bone, or, if your group's lucky, obsidian. You remember your first time using the thrower, how the spear leapt from your hand like it had its own mind, and how you nearly fell over from the unexpected force. Historians still argue whether spear throwers were first invented for large prey like mammoths or for smaller, faster animals that were too risky to chase on foot. Either way, once these tools appeared, the odds tilted sharply in human favor. Imagine a leopard that can throw its claws at you from 30 meters away. That's basically what the prey now faced. A quirky tidbit you heard from a wandering storyteller sticks with you. Some groups decorated their spear throwers with carved animals, believing the magic of the carved creature would transfer to the hunt. One hunter carried a thrower etched with a running gazelle. He swore it made his throws faster, though you suspect the real secret was his throwing arm. Today's plan is straightforward. You and 2 others will track the herd spotted yesterday near the waterhole. With the atlatl, you can strike from a distance, avoiding the exhausting chase that persistent hunting demands. You move quietly, the morning air cool and dry, each step bringing you closer to the faint hoof prints pressed into the soil. When the moment comes, you steady your breathing, plant your feet, and raise the thrower. The spear rests lightly in the groove, your arm cocked back. Time slows. You see the antelope ahead, ears flicking, bodies tensing. Then your arm whips forward, the atlatl snapping with a satisfying crack. The spear arcs clean through the air, and for a moment, you almost forget to breathe. It strikes true. The herd scatters in a blur of muscle and dust, but one animal stumbles. You run forward, heart pounding, not out of cruelty, but out of the deep, hungry truth that has driven every hunter before you. This is survival. As you kneel beside the animal, the spear still quivering in its side, you feel the strange mix of triumph and respect. Tools like the atlatl aren't just about killing. They're about closing the gap between what you can imagine and what your body can do. Back at camp, as the meat roasts over the fire, you notice the older hunters watching you with that quiet approval they rarely voice. You've proven you can use the spear thrower well, which means your place among them is a little more secure. Somewhere in the night, you think about how this simple lever might have been passed hand to hand for thousands of years, its design barely changing because it didn't need to. And tomorrow, when the hunt begins again, it will be there, waiting to extend your reach once more. The air near the waterhole is unlike anywhere else you've walked today. Cooler, heavier, with that earthy tang of wet clay and the layered scents of all the animals that have stopped here through the night. Your bare feet sink slightly into the damp ground, the chill of dew soaking the skin. Each step feels deliberate, almost ceremonial, as if the land itself knows you've entered a place where life and death have always met. You press yourself low into a clump of tall reeds. The stems sway gently in the faint breeze, hiding your shape but giving you narrow slits to see through. Every sound seems magnified here. The sharp plop of a frog slipping into the shallows, the rhythmic creak of branches as they rub together in the wind, the distant, throaty cough of a leopard somewhere beyond the edge of hearing. Then a ripple, a sound so soft you might have imagined it, breaks across the mirrored surface of the water. Mainstream historical fact. For countless generations, waterholes have been the most reliable hunting grounds in the prehistoric world. In dry seasons, they're magnets, pulling life from miles away. Hunters didn't need to chase endlessly. They simply learned where the thirsty would come and waited. But the advantage came with risk. Lions, hyenas, crocodiles, even rival hunting parties had the same idea. The waterhole is an arena, and every participant is both audience and performer. Your eyes trace the mud on the opposite bank. It's crowded with overlapping impressions. The broad, round prints of elephants, the cloven marks of zebra, and in between, the lighter, fresher traces you've been seeking. The delicate pointed hooves of gazelle. The edges of these prints are still sharp, unblurred by wind or sun. You tighten your grip on your spear. They passed here not long ago. Historians still argue whether ancient people preferred ambush at waterholes or saw them as too dangerous compared to open land pursuits. Some say ambush required less energy and reduced the risk of losing prey in a long chase. Others argue the danger of being cornered by a larger predator outweighed the benefits. Looking at the still water before you, you can see both sides, opportunity and threat in equal measure. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your memory. In some places, hunters covered themselves in a paste of mud and crushed leaves, not only to mask their scent, but to shield against the swarms of biting insects that thrived near water. You've tried it before, and while it keeps the bugs away, the smell is memorable, like a stew of pond water and rotting bark. It's the scent of commitment to the craft. The minutes begin to stretch in that slow, syrupy way they do when you're holding perfectly still. The sun, now higher, turns the water into a sheet of blinding silver if you look straight at it. Tiny ripples form where fish break the surface, each one momentarily catching the light. Somewhere to your right, a soft splash tells you a bird has landed in the shallows. You breathe slowly, shoulders loose, spear resting lightly across your knees. Then it happens, the faint crunch of hooves in the grass. Your ears catch the rhythm before your eyes see movement. You freeze, letting the sound guide you. Through a gap in the reeds, you glimpse the leading gazelle, its body taut but moving with a deceptive calm. Its head dips toward the water, ears flicking nervously. Behind it, others emerge, a shifting line of tan bodies framed by twitching tails and black striped flanks. You resist the urge to move too soon. Drinking animals are vulnerable, their attention fixed downward. But hesitation is dangerous. One stray scent carried by the wind, one flicker of shadow, and they'll bolt. You shift your weight, silent as fallen ash, and lift your spear into throwing position. The breeze stirs. Your stomach sinks as you feel it on your cheek, blowing toward the herd. The gazelle at the front stiffens, nostrils flaring. The moment is shrinking fast. Your muscles coil, and in one fluid motion, you rise and release. The spear arcs, catching the light before it vanishes into motion. A solid impact, followed instantly by chaos. Hooves drum the earth, reeds thrash, and the waterhole's surface shatters with splashes as the herd scatters. You push forward, heart hammering, eyes locked on your target. The gazelle stumbles, collapses. You're there in moments, retrieving your weapon before the scent of blood can draw unwanted company. As you drag the animal back toward the safer ground near camp, your breath is ragged, but not just from exertion. The waterhole has given you its prize today, but it also reminded you of its dangers. In a place where every creature comes to drink, you can never be certain who's watching from the shadows. That night, beneath a sky spangled with stars, you'll tell the story. Not with the loud boasts of a conqueror, but in the measured tone of someone who knows the waterhole is a place of delicate balance, where patience can turn still water into a feast, and where the hunter is only ever one mistake away from becoming the hunted. The morning air tastes different when you know you'll be running all day. It's sharper somehow, with every breath carrying the scent of grass, dust, and the faint musk of the animal you've been following since before sunrise. Your feet feel the ground's texture shift with each stride. Packed dirt here, loose sand there, the occasional sharp pebble that sends a spark of pain shooting up your leg but doesn't slow you. You can't slow down. This isn't the kind of hunt where you throw a spear from cover or spring a trap from hiding. This is persistence hunting, running the prey until it can't run anymore. Mainstream historical fact. Humans are one of the few mammals built for long-distance running in the heat. We sweat to cool ourselves, can breathe while running, and have tendons and muscles tuned for endurance rather than short bursts. Many animals are faster over short distances, but in the midday sun, they overheat if forced to keep moving. Historians still argue whether this strategy was common everywhere or mainly used in the hotter, open regions where overheating could cripple even the fastest antelope. Some believe persistence hunting shaped our very bodies. Long legs, springy Achilles tendons, and even the shape of our skulls to help regulate heat. Others think it was a specialized tactic, used only when opportunity and terrain aligned. You've been trailing the same gazelle since the cool dawn hours. At first, it easily outpaced you, vanishing into the tall grass. But you're not racing it. You're shadowing it. Every time it slows to rest, you close the gap. Every time it bolts, You keep coming, steady and relentless. It can sprint. You can endure. A quirky tidbit from an old hunter comes to mind. You don't have to be faster. You just have to be more stubborn. That's persistence hunting in one sentence. You remember the way he laughed as he said it, shaking his head like the absurdity of running for hours just to eat was some kind of inside joke. The sun is climbing now, painting the land in shimmering heat. The gazelle's trail is easier to follow. Its steps are heavier, the disturbed grass more erratic. You see a spot where it paused to pant, its hooves stamping in place, and you know you're wearing it down. Your own body is hot, but the sweat pouring down your skin keeps you cooler than your quarry. By midday, the air feels thick enough to drink. Your heartbeat is loud in your ears, but your pace is steady. The gazelle stumbles more often now, each burst of speed shorter than the last. You imagine what it's feeling. Lungs burning, muscles quivering, heat building with no relief. It's cruel in a way, but also clean. No ambush, no trickery, just endurance against endurance. Finally, you spot it ahead. Head lowered, legs trembling. You close the distance carefully, knowing that even now a sudden dash could ruin hours of work. When you're close enough, you lift your spear and let it fly. It strikes, and the gazelle collapses in the grass, too exhausted to fight. You kneel beside it, feeling the deep heat radiating from its body. This is what the hunt was about. Not speed, not strength, but patience and the refusal to stop moving. You've proven that on this vast, unforgiving land, a human can outlast almost anything. Back at camp, when the meat is roasting and the sun is sinking, you think about the strange beauty of it, how running, something so simple, could be a lifeline stretching back through tens of thousands of years. Tomorrow, your legs will ache, but tonight, they've earned their rest. Fine dust coats your legs as you walk along the edge of the dry grassland, the heat from the ground shimmering in waves. Last night, a short burst of rain left a few shallow puddles, and this morning, your group decided to check for tracks around them. A faint breeze carries the earthy tang of drying mud, mixed with the musk of old animal droppings, the kind of perfume nobody wants to wear, but which serves as a scent map for hunters. You kneel, pressing your palm to the ground, feeling the coolness seeping into your skin from a damp patch. A footprint, slender and deep, rests right at the water's edge, likely a small antelope, perhaps a steenbok, but what catches your attention is the faint scuff at the heel. This animal had been running, and not long before you arrived. It's the kind of detail most outsiders would miss, but to your group, it's the forest whispering in its own language. A mainstream historical fact crosses your mind. Archaeological research in South Africa shows that our ancestors were tracking animals at least 120,000 years ago, with stone tools found near the remains of ancient watering holes. This suggests tracking was not just instinct, but a cultural skill, passed carefully from one generation to the next. The group moves slowly, eyes scanning flattened grass and tiny clumps of soil kicked free. A quail suddenly bursts from a bush, sending your heart racing. You almost laugh, but quickly stifle it to avoid scaring off other game. This is the sort of moment you'll tell around the fire later, chuckling about how an ambush sometimes just startles a small bird. Then a faint sound reaches your ears, a twig snapping, soft but distinct. You signal for the group to stop. Everyone holds their breath. Sweat slides down your temple, but you don't wipe it away. Every sense sharpens. You crouch low, slip through a clump of scrub, and see a warthog. It's rooting in the soil for tubers, completely unaware of you. A few members of the group whisper to each other, "Should we take it?" This is the sort of situation modern archaeologists still debate. Did prehistoric humans only pursue predetermined targets, or did they opportunistically change their goal when a new chance appeared? Historians still argue whether such flexibility was a conscious strategy or just a survival reflex. You decide not to change course. The antelope's trail is still fresh, and the thought of tender red meat is far more appealing than the tough challenge of a warthog. The group lets the easy prey go and presses on. After a while, the tracks lead into dappled shade beneath scattered trees. You stop, placing your ear against the ground. Soft, uneven footsteps thrum faintly through the soil. A smile creeps onto your face. The antelope is near. From here, the technique shifts. Not just eyes and ears, but sensing vibrations through the earth. This fringe tidbit of skill is almost forgotten in modern times, but in the prehistoric world, it could mean the difference between eating and starving. You move forward, each step as light as a cat's. The smell of animal fur drifts in the wind, mingled with the sharp scent of crushed grass. That smell is both a promise of success and a warning. If you can smell it, it can likely smell you. A rustle in the brush ahead makes your pulse quicken. A shadow flickers. You hold your breath, raising your spear, not to throw, just to be ready. And then the antelope bolts. The group gives chase, but you know the game isn't over yet. The trail will continue like a song that never stops, only changes tempo. Your breath still runs heavy from the chase, but your feet don't stop. You know the rhythm of persistence hunting. Run just enough to keep the animal moving, but not so much that you burn yourself out before it tires. Around you, the grass ripples like a restless ocean, each movement betraying the wind's subtle push. Your eyes scan ahead for any flicker of whitetail, any ripple of disturbed vegetation. The antelope's tracks veer toward a cluster of low acacia trees. The ground here is patchy, alternating between soft sand and sharp gravel. Every footfall you place is calculated. Soft, where it might leave no sound. Steady, where loose stones threaten to skid and betray your approach. Sweat trickles down your back, and you catch yourself thinking of a joke your cousin once made. We don't chase dinner. Dinner chases us away from home. You stifle a smile, focus now, laugh later. A mainstream fact you once heard from an elder comes to mind. Humans are among the few mammals designed to cool down while running, thanks to sweat glands and upright posture. Unlike most animals, you can keep moving in the midday heat without overheating as quickly. Archaeologists believe this very trait was what made persistence hunting such a powerful strategy in prehistory. The group halts. 100 kneels and points. In the sand, fresh droppings glisten faintly in the sun. Still warm, your quarry is close. The wind shifts, dangerously, now blowing from your back toward the trees. If the antelope catches your scent, the chase will lengthen, maybe even fail. You quickly signal the group to arc left, using a small rise in the land as cover. You slip into the shade, and the sudden coolness wraps around you like a damp cloth. From here, sound becomes your compass. A faint cracking. Twigs, not too far. You creep closer, and the sound becomes clearer. Steady munching. The animal has paused to feed. This is the moment of choice. Some in the group ready their spears. Others gesture to wait, to get closer. And here's one of those scholarly debates. Historians still argue whether prehistoric hunters always coordinated with silent signals, or if each group developed its own improvised language in the field. Either way, you and your companions understand each other perfectly without a single word. You move as one, low and deliberate, letting the tall grass shield your approach. You can see it now, the curve of the antelope's flank, the twitch of its ears. Your heartbeat slows. Your breathing evens out. One step, then another. A sudden gust rattles the branches and the antelope's head jerks up. You freeze, every muscle aching to stay still. Second stretch. Then it lowers its head again. You take the last steps, raise your arm, and at the exact same moment, the group surges forward. The antelope bolts, but the throw is already in the air. Your spear finds its mark, not perfect, but enough to slow it. The chase resumes, but now the outcome is almost certain. Persistence hunting is a dance, and you're in the final verse. A quirky tidbit your grandfather once told you surfaces in your mind. Some hunters used to hum under their breath during chases, not for ritual, but to keep their breathing steady and footsteps even. You almost start humming yourself as the group closes the gap. The animal stumbles. One last sprint, and the hunt will be over. You feel that surge of pride, not just in the catch, but in the ancient rhythm you've just stepped into. The same one your ancestors danced thousands of years ago. The antelope lies still now, its chest no longer rising. The air is filled with the sound of your companion's breathing, the occasional rustle of leaves, and the faint hum of insects circling in the heat. You place a hand on its warm flank, not out of sentimentality, but as a silent acknowledgement of the animal's life. Out here, every meal is both victory and cost. The group doesn't linger. You know scavengers can appear faster than you'd believe. Hyenas, vultures, even bold jackals. The kill must be prepared for transport. Your tools are simple: sharp stone flakes, a bone scraper, and the practiced rhythm of hands that know what to do. Skinning begins at the legs. Careful slices that peel the hide like opening a well-wrapped bundle. The hide itself will be saved. It might become a sleeping mat, a carrying sling, or even strips for binding tools. A mainstream fact you recall? Some archaeological evidence from sites like Olorgesailie in Kenya suggests that prehistoric hunters were already butchering animals in specialized ways hundreds of thousands of years ago, not just for meat, but to preserve certain parts for tools or trade. This wasn't mere survival, it was strategy. The meat is cut into manageable slabs, some to be eaten fresh, others to be smoked or dried later. There's no waste. Tendons will serve as strong natural cordage. Bones will be split for marrow, rich with energy. Even the stomach may be cleaned and used as a water container, a trick that's as practical as it is surprising. One of the younger hunters makes a light joke, holding up the tail like a trophy plume and pretending to wear it as a hat. Laughter ripples through the group. It's a moment of release after hours of silent, tense focus. You chuckle too, though you keep your hands working. Out here, humor is as essential as flint and water. The heat presses down. A few of the group take turns scanning the horizon. a faint dust plume in the far distance, maybe just wind, maybe something moving. Historians still argue whether prehistoric people feared predators more immediately after a kill, or whether the real danger came later, when the scent of meat spread over the land. Either way, you don't take chances. The carcass is lighter now, stripped of most bulk. Using a sturdy branch and some hide strips, the group fashions a carrying pole. 2 hunters shoulder it, the meat swaying slightly as they begin the walk home. Your own role shifts to scout, moving a little ahead, eyes sweeping the ground for fresh tracks or signs of danger. It's during this walk that your mind wanders to one of those odd, almost unbelievable tidbits. In some communities, hunters supposedly left a small piece of meat at the site of a kill as an offering to the land, not from religion alone, but as a kind of practical superstition. The thinking was simple: share with the wild, and the wild might share with you again. Whether it worked or not, well, the fact that you're here carrying dinner suggests your group doesn't entirely dismiss the idea. The terrain changes. The soft grass gives way to rocky ground, and your calves ache from balancing on uneven surfaces. You pass a shallow stream where dragonflies hover over the water. The cool sound makes your throat ache with thirst, but you wait. Drinking here would slow the pace, and the sun still has height to fall. By the time you crest the ridge overlooking camp, the shadows are lengthening. You see the smoke of small fires, hear the faint shouts of children, and catch the smell of roasting tubers. The returning hunters are spotted immediately, and the camp stirs with excitement. Tonight will be a good night. There will be meat to share, stories to tell, and maybe, just maybe, a little dancing under the stars. You step into camp knowing that this day will be remembered not just as a meal, but as proof that the old ways still work and still matter. The camp becomes a swirl of movement the moment the carrying pole touches the ground. Children rush forward, wide-eyed, trying to peek at the meat, their hands hovering but not daring to touch until told. Elders approach more slowly, leaning on carved sticks, their faces lit with a mixture of approval and curiosity. You kneel beside the pile, your muscles still trembling from the hunt. The scent of the antelope's meat mingles with the earthy aroma of the campfires, and you can feel the day's sweat drying on your skin, leaving a faint crust of salt. One of the older women steps forward with a flint knife and takes over the final preparation. Her hands move with the ease of decades, separating cuts with minimal waste. Here, skill with a blade is as respected as skill with a spear. A mainstream historical fact drifts through your mind. Anthropologists believe that in many prehistoric communities, the butchering and distribution of meat followed strict social rules. Certain parts went to the hunters, others to elders, and still others to women and children. It wasn't just fairness, it was a survival system, ensuring everyone had a reason to keep the group strong. The group begins the distribution, calling names in an order everyone seems to know by heart. A boy runs up to you with a steaming strip of fresh-cooked meat skewered on a thin stick. You take it, blow on it, and chew slowly, savoring the rich, gamey taste. Your jaw works steadily. The fibers resist at first, then give way, releasing warmth and fat that fills your mouth. A fringe tidbit comes to mind. There are ethnographic reports from 19th century explorers of hunters in some African and Arctic communities who believed the first bite of a fresh kill should be swallowed without chewing, as a way of keeping the animal spirit strong inside you. Whether you believe it or not, you find yourself swallowing your first bite a little quicker than usual. Around you, laughter and low conversation weave together, rising and falling with the crackle of fire. A girl runs past, wearing the antelope's tail tied to her waist like a dancer's fringe. The men who carried the carcass earlier now sit close to the flames, rubbing their sore shoulders and swapping exaggerated tales about the chase, each trying to one-up the other. You recognize the rhythm of these stories, half truth, half performance, all part of the group's identity. Later, as darkness deepens, someone brings out a drum made from stretched hide, its surface catching the firelight in uneven glints. The beats start slow, matching the quiet conversation, then grow faster as others join in, clapping, stomping, even ululating in bursts. The circle tightens, bodies moving with the rhythm. Off to one side, an elder leans toward you and mutters an observation that sticks with you. Meat brings not only strength to the body, but to the bonds between us. Without it, we'd be just scattered shadows. It's a reminder that in this world, food isn't just fuel, it's glue. Scholars still debate whether such communal celebrations after a hunt were more about reinforcing social order or simply joy at having survived another day. You suspect it's both. There's a kind of unspoken gratitude in the air tonight. Gratitude for the kill, for the skill that made it possible, and for the fact that, at least for now, hunger has been pushed back a little further into the darkness. The music continues into the night, voices rising and falling like the wind over the grasslands. You watch the sparks drift upward into the dark sky, merging with the stars, and you feel the kind of bone-deep satisfaction that no solitary meal could ever give. By dawn, the camp stirs again, though the fires from last night still smolder in faint orange rings. You wake to the sound of soft humming, a woman weaving a cord from sinew, her hands moving almost without looking. The antelope hide lies stretched on a wooden frame nearby, its pale underside catching the early light. The air smells faintly of smoke and raw hide, a scent that clings to everything here, even your hair. You rub your eyes and remember what the elders always say. A good hunter isn't finished when the animal falls. The work after the kill is just as important as the chase. Every part of the animal has value. Nothing is wasted. Not the meat, not the bones, not the hide, not even the tendons. In fact, prehistoric evidence shows that some groups could strip a carcass in minutes, using stone tools so sharp they rival surgical scalpels in edge quality. You wander closer to the hide, where a pair of younger hunters scrape away the last bits of flesh with long flaked scrapers. Their arms move in steady arcs, and the faint rasping sound blends with the morning bird song. This hide will become something useful, perhaps a waterskin, a cloak, or wrappings for the feet when the cold comes. Off to one side, a man is shaping the antelope's long leg bones into smooth, narrow points. You watch him split one along its length with a single, precise strike, then use a sandstone slab to grind the edge. A fringe fact flickers in your mind. Some prehistoric peoples fashioned bone needles so fine they could sew watertight seams, a skill that, quite literally, kept them alive in cold, wet climates. Nearby, the children are gathering the hooves into a small pile, giggling as they shake them to hear the dull clack. You know these will probably be strung together to make rattles for ceremonies, or hunting dances. In this world, even sound has its uses. You notice the skull has been set aside, eyes already removed, jaw slightly open. An elder sprinkles powdered ochre over it and murmurs something under their breath. Historians still argue whether such acts were purely practical, helping to keep insects away, or if they carried spiritual weight, honoring the animal and ensuring future hunting luck. Later in the day, the sinew cords are ready. One is already being fitted onto a spear as binding, holding the stone point in place. Another is twisted into a bowstring. You test its tension with a light pull. It sings faintly, a note so quiet you almost think you imagined it. The archer grins at you, proud of the sound. You pause to take in the scene. Every person here, from the smallest child to the oldest elder, has a role in this process. The hunt doesn't end with the kill. It ends when every usable part of the animal has been transformed into something that can help the group survive. And even then, the knowledge gained, how the animal moved, where it was found, what signs led you there, becomes part of the tribe's shared memory. That night, as you sit near the drying racks, the smell of curing meat drifts through the air. It's rich, smoky, and comforting. You imagine the strips being chewed on cold winter mornings, keeping hunger at bay when game is scarce. Somewhere in the darkness, a wolf howls, but it sounds far away, muffled by the warmth of the fire and the quiet pride of a job well done. The next morning, you rise before the sun, pulled awake by the murmur of voices and the gentle clinking of stone points against one another. A group of hunters sits in a half circle, repairing weapons for the next big hunt. The air is cool, and a thin mist curls over the grassland beyond the camp. You can feel the anticipation building, like the charged stillness before a storm. Today isn't just any hunt. It's the seasonal migration of the great herds. Out there, beyond the low ridge, hundreds of animals will be on the move. Bison, perhaps, or wild horses, depending on the year. These moments are rare, and they can change the tribe's fortune for months. You walk over to a man chipping a flint point. He holds it close to his chest, the edge flashing with each careful strike. He explains that for a mass hunt, you need more than one weapon ready. Sometimes a spear will break, or a point will shatter on impact. Mainstream archaeological finds have uncovered caches of hundreds of points buried together, evidence of careful preparation before such events. Nearby, a woman is coiling rope made from twisted plant fibers. You're reminded of a fringe tidbit you once heard. Some prehistoric communities wove massive nets that could funnel animals toward a cliff or into an enclosure, allowing the hunters to close in more easily. It sounds almost too sophisticated for the time, yet experimental archaeologists have proven it can work. By midday, the camp begins to move. People carry weapons, water skins, and bundles of dried meat for the long wait ahead. The plan is to reach a narrow pass where the herd is likely to pass. You travel in a winding column, careful to stay downwind of where the animals will come. The ground here is patterned with old hoof prints, some sun-cracked, others fresh. Hours pass before you hear it, the deep, rhythmic thudding of many hooves on the earth. It's like distant thunder. The sound grows until you can feel it through the soles of your feet. Then the first animals appear, dark shapes against the shimmering heat haze. The hunters tense, eyes narrowing, bodies leaning forward like drawn bows. At the signal, you and several others move into position. The front runners are allowed to pass. The herd is funneled toward the choke point between two rocky outcrops. Spears fly, a volley of points arcing through the air. Some hit, some don't. But with numbers like this, the hunters can choose targets carefully. The chaos is short but intense. The herd veers, some animals stumbling, others surging past. Dust fills your mouth and nose, the sun glaring in your eyes. When it's over, the ground is a patchwork of hoof prints and fallen bodies. There's a moment of silence, broken only by the heavy breathing of hunters and the crackle of stirred dust. Historians still argue whether mass hunts like this were sustainable in the long term, or whether they sometimes wiped out entire herds in a region. You can see both sides. Today's success will feed the tribe for weeks, maybe months, but it's a bounty that comes at a cost. Work begins immediately. Teams move from animal to animal, marking which will be butchered first. Others keep watch for predators, who will almost certainly be drawn by the smell. You help tie legs together and drag smaller bodies toward the camp route, while the largest carcasses are dressed on the spot. By evening, the sun sets behind a haze of stirred dust. The air is warm and heavy with the scent of blood, sweat, and fresh hides. As you trudge back to camp, carrying your share of meat, you glance over your shoulder at the darkening plain. The hoof prints already begin to blur in the wind, as if the land is erasing the memory of what happened here. You know the cycle will repeat, another season, another hunt. But for now, the camp will sleep full and safe, and you, for once, will sleep without the gnaw of hunger in your belly. The days after the great hunt are a blur of work. The tribe becomes a living, breathing machine of preservation and preparation. Fires burn constantly, smoke curling into the sky like thin gray ribbons. Strips of meat hang from wooden racks, drying slowly in the heat. The air smells rich, part savory, part acrid, from the constant smoke. Your role shifts from hunter to laborer. You spend hours scraping hides clean with stone tools, working the tough fibers until they loosen. One elder shows you how to rub in a mixture of animal fat and ground bark to keep the leather supple. Archaeologists have found traces of such tanning mixtures on ancient tools, the residues still clinging thousands of years later, a testament to how long these skills have been practiced. Elsewhere in camp, children help pluck sinew from leg tendons, carefully rolling the long fibrous strands into neat bundles. Sinew is strong and flexible. It will be used for sewing hides or lashing spear points. A fringed tidbit you once overheard comes to mind. Some researchers believe sinew, when wetted and allowed to dry under tension, can hold stronger than modern glue. It's one of those small, invisible technologies that keeps a community alive. Even as the work continues, the mood in camp is good. Bellies are full, and laughter comes easily. The leaders, however, keep an eye on the weather. Darker clouds to the west hint at the shifting season. You've heard the debates. Did early humans plan migrations around weather patterns? Or did they move mainly in response to prey movement? There's evidence for both, but no clear answer. In the evenings, the fires become the heart of the camp. Stories spill into the smoky air, each tale weaving history, myth, and personal memory into one. One man boasts of throwing his spear so hard it pierced 2 animals in a row. An unlikely claim, but no one interrupts. An older woman counters with a story about a hunt where the prey turned on the hunters, forcing them to climb a tree and wait for hours. Everyone laughs, even those who weren't there. You notice how the rhythm of life changes after abundance. Before, every day was sharpened by hunger. Now, there's room for music. A small group gathers with hollowed bone flutes and stretched hide drums, filling the air with a pulsing beat. The sound blends with the crackle of the fires and the distant call of night birds. Still, the leaders remind everyone that good fortune is temporary. Meat spoils, tools break, weather changes, and so the tribe works with the quiet urgency of those who have known hunger before and expect it to return. You help dig a shallow pit lined with stones to store dried meat, covering it with branches and earth. The smell is faint enough that scavengers might pass it by. One evening, as the sun melts into a deep orange glow, you take a moment away from the noise. You walk to the edge of camp and look out over the darkening plains. The wind has picked up, carrying the scent of distant rain. The horizon seems endless, but you know somewhere out there the herds are already moving toward their next grazing land. You wonder, will you follow them? Or will the tribe risk staying put through the first snows? The decision will come soon, and with it, the next chapter of survival. For now, you return to the firelight, where laughter, smoke, and the warm glow of meat drying over flames remind you that, for this brief moment, you are living in one of the rare pauses in the endless chase. The pause doesn't last. It never does. One morning, before the sun has fully pushed above the horizon, you hear the alarm call. 2 sharp whistles followed by a long, low note. Everyone in camp freezes. It's the signal for danger. You grab your spear and jog toward the edge of camp where the scouts are gathered. They point to the western horizon. There, against the pale dawn light, a line of shapes is moving. Not animals. People. It's another group. 20 or more, walking in loose formation. You can't yet tell if they come as friends, rivals, or something in between. Your heart beats faster. In the past, such meetings could mean sharing food and stories, or losing everything in a single violent clash. Anthropologists studying early human remains have found both signs of cooperation: shared resources, adopted outsiders, and evidence of deadly conflict, like embedded spear points in bones. Survival didn't come with rules, it came with choices. The strangers draw closer. They carry long spears, bundles slung across their backs, and their bodies are painted with streaks of ash and ochre. A fringe tidbit, you recall? Some researchers believe body paint served not just ritual purposes, but also as a kind of uniform, signaling group identity over long distances. Here, under the wide sky, that seems entirely plausible. Your leaders move to the front, motioning for everyone else to stay back. The 2 groups meet on neutral ground, voices low but tense. You watch closely, scanning for subtle cues, the tilt of a head, the way hands rest on weapons. You wonder about the scholarly debate over why early humans sometimes chose to share territory instead of fighting for it. Was it a matter of kinship, mutual need, or simple chance? Minutes pass. The tension is thick. Finally, one of the strangers steps forward and offers something: a bundle of dried meat wrapped in hide. Your leader accepts it slowly, then gestures toward the camp. The mood shifts slightly. Weapons remain in hand, but the energy feels less like a spark waiting to catch. They come into camp, eyes scanning everything. The air fills with overlapping voices, cautious but curious. A few of their hunters examine your drying racks, touching the hides and sniffing the smoked meat. Children stare at one another from behind their parents' legs. That night, both groups sit around the largest fire. The strangers share tales of a herd they've been following and of storms farther west that have driven animals into new grazing lands. In return, your group offers news of the rivers ahead, where fish are plentiful and flint can be found in the cliffs. You notice that food and information are traded with equal care. Both can mean the difference between life and death. As the fire burns lower, the leaders speak again, this time with gestures toward the horizon. You realize a decision is being made whether to travel together for a time. There's risk in it. A larger group moves more slowly and needs more food. But there's also safety in numbers. By the time the moon is high, the choice is set. At dawn, you will break camp together. New faces will join your days, new voices your nights. You don't know how long the alliance will last, but for now, it feels like a new thread has been woven into your tribe's fabric. You lie awake on your mat, listening to the murmurs of two camps blending into one, and wonder what the next hunt will bring. The thought doesn't keep you awake for long. Fatigue and the steady crackle of the fire lull you into sleep. The morning of departure feels different, quieter, heavier. Even the air seems to hold its breath. You wake before dawn, packing your few belongings, a hide blanket, a small pouch of dried berries, the sharpened flint you've carried for months. Around you, the camp stirs in low murmurs. 2 fires remain lit, one for your group, one for the strangers. But today, they will merge into a single blaze before you go. The alliance isn't without unease. Some of your own glance at the newcomers with narrowed eyes, as if still weighing the risk. But as you hoist your bundle onto your back, you know that for now, you will walk the same trail. Archaeologists have found traces of such joint campsites, 2 distinct styles of tool-making in the same layer of earth, hinting at temporary unions that left their mark in stone. As the first rays of sunlight spill across the plain, the leaders give the signal. The merged group begins to move. The pace is slower now, with elders and children from both sides intermingling. You keep near the front, where you can see the land unfolding, a ribbon of grassland leading toward distant hills. Mid-morning, you pass an old water hole. Bones lie scattered nearby. Antelope, zebra, even the long curved horns of an oryx. You remember a fringe fact one of the elders once shared. Some hunters believed certain water holes were cursed, that spirits claimed animals and left their remains as warnings. Standing there now, with vultures wheeling overhead, you can almost believe it. The journey is long, but the rhythm of walking side by side builds a strange kind of trust. When a thorn catches your leg, it's one of the newcomers who stops to pull it free. Later, you hand a child from their group a strip of dried meat when she begins to lag. These small exchanges ripple outward, softening the edges between you. By afternoon, the land begins to change. The grass thins, replaced by patches of cracked earth. Heat radiates from the ground in visible waves. Your mind drifts to the scholarly debate over how ancient humans adapted to such harsh transitions. Did they plan routes around known drought zones, or did they press forward and trust in endurance? Looking around at the steady line of walkers, you feel the answer might be both. As the sun dips low, Your group stops near a cluster of acacia trees. The combined fires are lit, their smoke curling into the cooling air. The strangers' hunters tell a story, half warning, half boast, of a lion that stalked them for 3 nights before they turned the hunt on it. Your own elders answer with the tale of the great flood that reshaped a valley and drove the herds to higher ground. When the last embers glow red, you stretch out under the stars. The night is unusually quiet, the kind of stillness that makes the world feel paused. Somewhere nearby, the strangers' voices fade into sleep. You realize you are part of something larger now, a fragile, shifting network of people bound not by blood, but by the thin thread of mutual need. You close your eyes, the day's miles heavy in your muscles, and let the darkness take you. Tomorrow will bring more steps, more choices, and perhaps more change. But tonight, you dream of walking, always walking, through a land that never truly belongs to anyone. If you're still awake, don't worry. We'll be right here with you tonight, and together we'll drift into our second story. You wake before dawn, the sky still painted in deep indigo, and stretch your stiff limbs. Mist clings to the tall grasses, and the air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and distant water. Today, you aren't just following a trail, you're thinking ahead, considering the movements of herds, the hidden patterns of predators, and the slow, almost imperceptible shifts in the land itself. Hunting here isn't just about skill. It's about timing, patience, and an almost intuitive understanding of seasonal cycles. As you trudge through the wet grass, you notice the subtle changes in foliage. Fresh shoots nibbled along one edge, bent reeds near a stream. These are the footprints of the prey, hints of recent activity that tell you where the herd has been sleeping, feeding, and drinking. Mainstream archaeologists have noted that prehistoric hunters tracked game not only by sight, but also by interpreting environmental cues like trampled plants, broken branches, and soil impressions. You feel a quiet thrill knowing that every observation is part of a larger strategy. A fringe tidbit comes to mind. Some anthropologists suggest that early humans could predict migration patterns based on the phases of the moon or the positions of certain stars. While this is debated, you can't help but notice how the subtle shifts in night and day rhythms seem to coincide with animal movements. Could this be instinct, careful observation, or early astronomy at work? Perhaps a bit of all three. You crouch near a waterhole, watching the mirrored surface ripple as a lone gazelle steps cautiously to drink. Its ears twitch constantly, scanning for danger. You remember the elder hunter's teachings. Prey always have a pattern, and recognizing it is key. You watch how it approaches, drinks, and retreats, noting every hesitation. Historians still argue whether such acute observation was learned socially or if early humans developed it independently as an innate survival skill. The herd is spread thinly across the plains, but the seasonal logic is clear. You follow them, keeping a low profile, using shadows, rocks, and shrubs as natural camouflage. Your muscles ache, but you are fueled by the knowledge that today's success depends on understanding the cycles of life around you. Each step, each pause, each glance at the shifting light is a calculation, a tiny piece of intelligence honed over generations. By mid-morning, you notice the terrain changing. Dry, cracked soil giving way to patches of green. The herd slows, Grazing near a familiar cluster of trees, you pause, reflecting on how prehistoric hunters might have memorized such seasonal landmarks over decades. This knowledge allowed them to plan months in advance, ensuring food security. You marvel at the foresight embedded in these ancient practices, realizing that hunting was as much about prediction as it was about action. The wind shifts, carrying the musky scent of the herd. You blend into the shadows, inching closer, careful to mimic the natural noises of the environment. Even your breathing feels measured, controlled, almost part of the landscape. It's not just physical skill, it's mental discipline, strategic patience. As you prepare to approach the grazing animals, you reflect on the delicate balance that prehistoric hunters maintained between patience and action, observation and risk. Their intelligence wasn't measured by tools alone, but by their understanding of patterns, cycles, and the subtle rhythms of the wild. And here, in the early light of a new day, you feel a part of that continuum, standing at the edge of instinct and insight. You move quietly through the thickening brush, the sunlight now warming the dew-laden grasses. Ahead, a small water hole glimmers like a mirror in the valley below. You know from experience that this is more than just a place to quench thirst. It's a crossroads of life. Animals gather here in predictable rhythms. The cautious antelope, the lumbering bison, and the occasional predator lurking at the edges. Every drop of water is a clue, every footprint a story written in mud. As you descend toward the water, you notice patterns in how the animals approach. The older ones drink first, eyes darting constantly, while the younger ones hesitate, learning from the experienced. Mainstream research shows that prehistoric hunters were acutely aware of these habits, timing their approaches to avoid spooking the herd and maximize their chances of success. You follow the same principle, letting the natural sequence of behavior dictate your movement. A fringe tidbit crosses your mind. Some researchers suggest that early humans marked specific water holes with stones or carvings, almost like a primitive map, to remember optimal hunting sites year after year. You glance at the worn rocks surrounding the pool and imagine ancestors tracing similar markers, encoding knowledge into the landscape itself. Whether true or not, it makes sense. The animals return, and the hunters must, too. You crouch behind a low embankment, studying the herd's approach. The scent of water is mixed with the musky smell of hooves on damp soil. Each animal has a rhythm, a personal timing, and you begin to map it in your mind. Historians still argue whether this kind of environmental intelligence was instinctive or socially transmitted. But either way, it's clear that acute observation played a vital role in survival. The herd shifts nervously as a breeze carries your scent closer. You freeze, remembering the elder hunter's advice. Patience is as crucial as speed. You wait, letting the animals settle, observing how their movements signal feeding patterns, social hierarchies, and alertness. Each subtle gesture, the flick of an ear, the rise of a tail, is information you absorb and process. Hours pass, the sun climbing higher, and you notice how seasonal shifts affect behavior. This waterhole, once crowded in spring, is now sparsely visited, suggesting migration routes are already underway. You mentally chart the likely paths, recognizing that your intelligence as a hunter relies on anticipation just as much as reaction. By mid-afternoon, You take a careful step closer, mimicking a rustle of leaves that the wind would carry naturally. The antelope freeze, then resume grazing, unaware of your presence. You marvel at how prehistoric people must have studied water sources in this way, building detailed mental maps over years. These observations were often passed down verbally, through mimicry, and sometimes through drawings or carvings. As the light shifts, you retreat from the waterhole, carrying with you the knowledge of timing, flow, and habit. The day's lesson is clear. The smartest hunters were those who understood water as both a necessity for prey and a strategic point of control. In this delicate balance, foresight, patience, and environmental awareness are just as important as skill with spear or bow. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the undulating plain as you move cautiously along a narrow game trail. You can hear the faint rustle of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig, each sound a potential clue to the movements of nearby prey. Your focus sharpens and your senses feel heightened, as if your body itself is an extension of the land. Understanding animal behavior isn't just an advantage, it is survival. You pause near a cluster of shrubs, noticing small depressions in the soil where animals have rested. Some are fresh, the soil still slightly damp, while others have hardened under the sun. Mainstream studies show that prehistoric hunters were keenly aware of such signs, using them to determine not only where animals were, but their size, health, and even mood. Today, you replicate this attention, tracing paw prints with your eyes, following the rhythm of hoofbeats impressed into the earth of fringed tidbit surfaces. Some researchers speculate that early humans could read more than just footprints. They might have interpreted subtle behavioral cues, such as the direction of tail flicks or ear twitches, to predict imminent flight or aggression. You watch a young gazelle flick its tail repeatedly, and instinctively you recognize it as a signal of unease. Could it be that these nuanced observations were an early form of interspecies communication? Perhaps. You crouch low, your breathing slow and measured. Every movement of the herd is a lesson. Older members lead with cautious steps, testing the terrain and checking for predators. Younger ones follow, learning patterns that will guide them for life. Historians still argue whether these observational skills were innate or taught through prolonged mentorship. But watching the herd unfold its behavior, it's easy to imagine both methods operating together. The wind shifts again, carrying the scent of distant water and grass. You notice the grazing patterns change subtly, with animals feeding in a short burst before pausing to scan their surroundings. You mentally chart these pauses, understanding that patience is as important as any weapon. Your brain traces timelines and distances, creating a dynamic map that stretches beyond immediate vision, much like your prehistoric counterparts would have done. Suddenly, a predator's shadow flits across the terrain, and the herd reacts almost instantaneously. You note how the prey's responses are coordinated, how the younger ones mimic the elders' evasive strategies. You marvel at the intelligence behind these instinctive actions, realizing that early humans needed to anticipate such behaviors not just once, but continuously, integrating both risk assessment and timing into their strategy. By twilight, you retreat to a vantage point atop a low ridge. From here, you can watch the patterns of movement across the valley floor, the subtle rhythms of feeding, resting, and vigilance. The day's observations reaffirm a truth. The smartest hunters weren't simply strong or fast. They were keenly aware, endlessly patient, and constantly analyzing. Your own mind feels stretched and sharpened, a reflection of the cognitive demands placed on those who lived and thrived by reading the behaviors of the creatures around them. The sky has softened into a gentle orange glow. As you move through the last stretches of the plains, your eyes trained on the subtle movements of the wildlife, you realize today's hunt isn't about a single species. It's about multi-species coordination. You need to decide which animals to target first, which to leave alone, and how to balance risk against the nutritional payoff. This kind of decision-making is what separates mere survival from real strategic intelligence. You pause by a small grove, noticing a herd of gazelle grazing near a cluster of low bushes while a group of wild boar roots in the underbrush nearby. The prey's behaviors are different. The gazelle are alert and skittish, moving quickly, while the boar are methodical, snuffling through the soil and harder to approach quietly. Mainstream anthropologists have long emphasized that early humans understood these differences and adapted their hunting strategies accordingly, often assigning different hunters to different tasks based on skill and knowledge. A fringe tidbit comes to mind. Some evidence suggests that prehistoric hunters may have used one species to distract another, intentionally driving a herd past a vantage point to ambush a secondary target. The idea of multi-species manipulation sounds almost modern, yet experiments with recreated techniques show it could work surprisingly well. You consider how such strategies require not just observation, but planning and anticipation, a cognitive load far beyond simple reaction. You crouch in a shallow depression, calculating the best approach. You notice the grazing patterns of the gazelle. They feed in small clusters, repeatedly scanning the horizon. You also track the rooting paths of the boar, noting the depth and direction of their foraging. Historians still argue whether early humans planned these coordinated hunts on the fly or followed long-learned seasonal routines. Either way, attention to subtle cues is crucial. As you advance, you assign mental roles to your imagined hunting companions, mimicking the likely social coordination of real prehistoric groups. One hunter distracts the gazelle, another prepares to intercept fleeing boar, and you remain the observer, adjusting timing and positioning. The level of strategic thinking required is immense. It is no longer a single act, but a symphony of movement, patience, and prediction. A breeze carries the scent of distant smoke, reminding you that other predators, wolves or big cats, might also be stalking these creatures. You factor them into your mental calculations, considering who might flee first and which pathways offer the safest approach. You realize that the smartest hunters not only understood their prey, but the broader ecosystem in which the hunt unfolded. By dusk, you have managed to follow multiple trails simultaneously, tracking shifts in feeding and resting patterns, noting interactions between species, and imagining the precise timing required for a successful multi-species hunt. Each observation reinforces the extraordinary mental sophistication of early humans. They needed foresight, adaptability, and an intricate understanding of animal behavior. In these plains, intelligence is measured in observation, anticipation, and the careful orchestration of each step. The morning air is crisp and carries a metallic tang of dew on stone, reminding you that today will be about innovation, creating tools that give you an edge over prey. You run your fingers over the spear you crafted yesterday, the stone tip perfectly chipped, the shaft smoothed by careful sanding. Tool innovation isn't just about craftsmanship. It's about problem solving, anticipating the needs of the hunt before the prey even appears. Your hands remember every lesson, every failed tip and snapped shaft, each one an education in survival. You move toward a ridge overlooking a small valley where a herd of deer grazes lazily, unaware of your presence. Mainstream archaeology tells us that early humans experimented constantly, adjusting the length, weight, and balance of weapons to suit different species and terrain. You test a few small jabs with your spear against the soft ground, imagining how different weights and angles would affect a strike. The mental simulation is as critical as the physical practice. A fringe tidbit enters your mind. Some researchers suggest that early humans may have used poisonous plant extracts or resin-coated tips on weapons to increase lethality, though evidence is sparse and debated. You imagine dipping a spear into a sticky sap, considering how the concept of chemical enhancement reflects a sophisticated understanding of cause and effect. Could prehistoric humans have been conducting primitive chemistry experiments without realizing it? Perhaps. As you approach the herd, you notice their patterns, some grazing in the sun, others near the shadow of trees, and a few alert with ears twitching constantly. You adjust your tools in hand, shorter spear for a quick jab, longer for thrusting from a distance, and plan your approach. Historians still argue whether tool specialization emerged primarily from necessity or from cultural transmission of knowledge. But watching the subtle differences in terrain and prey behavior, the reasoning seems obvious. You crouch low, using natural cover to move closer, testing the sharpness of your blade against bark and bone fragments. Every small action is a rehearsal for real hunting. You recall elders' tales of innovation, sharpening edges with sandstones, flaking arrowheads to increase penetration, even binding tips with sinew for reinforcement. These lessons weren't just practical, they were passed orally, often demonstrated through repeated trial and error. The herd reacts subtly to a shifting breeze, their grazing slows. You pause, considering whether to adjust the balance of your spear or switch to a throwing implement. Anticipation of prey response is as much a part of tool use as the weapon itself. You realize that innovation was never static. A hunter had to continually adapt tools to environment, prey, and technique, and pass improvements on to the next generation. By late morning, you've experimented with several spear configurations, imagining different materials, harder wood, denser stone tips, and bindings reinforced with plant fibers. Each variation represents a cognitive leap, understanding leverage, weight distribution, and impact dynamics without formal instruction. The smartest hunters weren't only strong, they were inventors, engineers, and problem solvers. As the sun climbs higher, you step back from the ridge and survey your work. Your mind runs through every combination of movement, tool, and environmental factor, imagining scenarios and outcomes. Tool innovation, you realize, is intelligence in action, a reflection of observation, experimentation, and foresight. Your ancestors didn't just hunt, They analyzed, theorized, and refined, turning survival into a craft that required both body and mind in harmony. The day is still young, yet the air already shimmers with heat rising off the dry earth. You stand at the edge of a small canyon, watching smoke curl lazily from a distant fire, and think about fire, not as a source of warmth or cooking, but as a strategic hunting tool. Controlled fire is an extension of human intelligence, a way to manipulate the landscape and influence animal behavior. Today, your task is to understand its role in driving prey, creating barriers, and signaling allies. You approach a narrow ravine where deer often graze. Mainstream evidence shows that prehistoric humans used fire to flush game into confined areas or ambush zones. You can almost see the tactical possibilities. Small controlled burns creating smoke, guiding animals along a predictable path, forcing them to make choices that favor hunters. You move slowly along the ridge, imagining how your ancestors would calculate wind direction, terrain, and timing, knowing that a single mistake could drive prey in the wrong direction, or worse, ignite an uncontrolled blaze. A fringe detail pops into your mind. Some anthropologists speculate that early humans may have used fire not only for hunting, but also as a psychological tool, creating fear or confusion among animals. Experiments with modern animals suggest that smoke can alter herd movement subtly, making them more predictable. Whether this was intentional or learned by trial and error remains debated, but it hints at an early understanding of cause, effect, and environmental manipulation. You crouch behind a low rock outcrop, observing a herd that has wandered near your imagined burn zone. Their movements are deliberate and cautious, as if aware of invisible threats. You reflect on the scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether fire-based hunting was widespread or limited to small groups experimenting with innovative techniques. Either way, the intelligence required to coordinate fire, monitor animal response, and act in concert with other hunters is impressive. The sun climbs higher, and you mentally map potential escape routes for the prey and optimal positions for hunters. Fire isn't just a tool, it's a predictive instrument. By observing wind shifts, smoke density, and herd reaction, you can anticipate the trajectory of fleeing animals. Each adjustment is a calculation, a test of knowledge, and a lesson in patience. You wonder how many generations refine these methods, passing wisdom like an invisible hand guiding the next hunt. As afternoon arrives, the herd begins to move, nudged by imagined smoke and the shifting heat. You imagine yourself coordinating with other hunters, one group driving the animals, another lying in wait, adjusting spear angles and position. The level of planning required is remarkable, blending observation, social coordination, and tactical experimentation. The intelligence displayed here isn't just physical, it's strategic, predictive, and adaptive. By dusk, you step back from the ridge, letting your mind replay the day's lessons. Fire, wind, terrain, and prey behavior intertwine in a complex system, and you realize that prehistoric hunters who mastered these elements weren't just strong. They were thinkers, planners, and early engineers of the natural world. Every successful hunt depends not only on skill and speed, but on the subtle orchestration of the environment itself. Night falls slowly, draping the landscape in deep indigo and silvering the edges of leaves with moonlight. You move quietly, through the underbrush, aware that hunting after dark demands a different kind of intelligence. Sounds are sharper, scents stronger, and shadows conceal both prey and predator. Tonight, stealth and patience become your primary tools, your senses stretching to compensate for what vision cannot detect. You pause near a narrow stream where deer and smaller mammals often come to drink. Mainstream archaeology tells us that some prehistoric humans conducted night hunts, relying on heightened senses and strategic positioning rather than speed alone. You move with deliberate care, listening for the faint crunch of leaves or the soft splash of water, interpreting each signal as a potential opportunity. A fringed tidbit surfaces. Some anthropologists suggest that early humans may have used reflective surfaces, such as polished stones or pools of water, to gauge animal positions at night. While this is debated, you experiment mentally, imagining how a glint of reflected moonlight could betray a herd's movement or reveal a predator's shadow. Even in silence, subtle innovations like these could make the difference between success and failure. You crouch low as a rabbit emerges from the brush, sniffing the air. Its ears pivot toward you, scanning, calculating danger. You freeze, noting the tiniest shifts in posture, the tail flick, the cautious paw step, the sudden pause. Historians still argue whether such nocturnal skills were innate or taught, passed down from elder hunters through observation and careful demonstration. Tonight, though, you feel the truth in both possibilities. Instinct and teaching intertwined. The forest around you hums with life. Owls call softly from distant branches, insects chirp in rhythmic patterns, and the faint rustle of a fox signals a rival hunter nearby. You realize that night hunting is as much about understanding other predators as it is about tracking prey. Your intelligence, once honed for daylight, now stretches into new dimensions, interpreting environmental cues in darkness, integrating information, and anticipating movement in low visibility. You experiment with your approach, using the natural rustle of leaves to mask your steps, aligning with shadows and dips in the terrain. Every movement is deliberate, every pause measured. Prehistoric humans would have relied on similar tactics, combining knowledge of prey habits, wind patterns, and natural cover. Each success tonight reinforces the notion that hunting is more than physical skill. It is environmental literacy and behavioral insight fused together. By midnight, you find yourself perched on a low ridge overlooking a clearing where deer cautiously graze. You notice subtle differences in alertness between individuals, and you adjust your path accordingly, always predicting movement, always anticipating reactions. The smartest hunters were those who observed relentlessly, acted with patience, and understood that darkness magnifies the stakes and rewards of every choice. As the first hints of dawn touch the treetops, you retreat, your mind brimming with observations. Night hunting has revealed a different layer of intelligence, the interplay of sensory perception, prediction, and environmental adaptation. Tonight, your understanding of survival deepens, reminding you that human cunning is as much a product of awareness as of strength. The sun rises slowly, spilling golden light across the rugged terrain, and you feel the ache of yesterday's night hunt still in your muscles. Today isn't about chasing or stalking, it's about learning from those who came before you. You move to a familiar ridge where elder hunters often sit, observing the valley below. Their presence is a reminder that survival depended not only on instinct, but also on accumulated wisdom passed through generations. You crouch beside one of the older hunters, watching how he reads the landscape. Every step of an animal, every rustle of grass, every ripple on the water reveals information. Mainstream studies highlight that social learning was vital in prehistoric societies, allowing younger hunters to absorb subtle techniques without facing constant risk. You notice his finger tracing faint tracks in the soil, pointing out differences in size and stride, teaching you how to distinguish a juvenile deer from a full-grown stag. A fringe detail comes to mind. Some anthropologists propose that elders may have used storytelling, chants, or gestures not just for instruction, but to encode hunting knowledge in memorable, almost ritualized forms. You imagine a whispered chant accompanying the tracing of footprints, a mnemonic system for remembering patterns and behaviors. Whether literal or symbolic, it emphasizes that teaching and intelligence were deeply intertwined. You mirror his movements, crouching low, tilting your head, and noticing details you would have otherwise missed. The elder nods subtly, approvingly. Historians still argue whether these skills were predominantly learned through imitation or through explicit verbal guidance, but you sense a blend. Trial, error, and careful observation combined with instruction to form a holistic education. The herd in the distance shifts, grazing along familiar paths, unaware of your presence. You watch how the elder anticipates their movements, predicting pauses, alarms, and feeding sequences. His attention to subtle cues, the direction of a tail flick, the tilt of a head, the rustle of leaves, demonstrates a profound understanding of animal psychology. You reflect that intelligence isn't just reactive, it's predictive, and the transmission of this skill relies on patient mentorship. By mid-morning, you've spent hours observing, practicing subtle movements, and internalizing strategies. Each step becomes a lesson in patience, observation, and foresight. You realize that the elders weren't just teaching you to hunt. They were cultivating cognitive skills, pattern recognition, spatial awareness, and decision-making under uncertainty. As the sun climbs higher, you follow the elder into a narrow ravine, where smaller prey scuttles among rocks. You notice how he positions himself to avoid detection while maximizing observation, blending with shadows and using terrain as a natural screen. The wisdom is subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye, but critical for survival. By the time you sit to rest, you feel the weight of accumulated knowledge settle into your own instincts, connecting intuition with observation and skill with memory. In this quiet learning, you understand that prehistoric intelligence wasn't merely physical, it was social, cumulative, and reflective. Every observation, every subtle gesture, every story passed down strengthened the mind as much as the body. You are part of this continuum, a link between past hunters and future generations. By midday, the sun has climbed high and the landscape stretches endlessly before you. Today's lesson is long-term thinking, planning for survival, not just in the moment, but weeks, months, and even seasons ahead. You wander along familiar game trails, mentally marking areas where animals feed, drink, and rest. Prehistoric hunters had to anticipate scarcity, tracking herd movements and seasonal vegetation cycles to ensure that their communities would not go hungry. You pause at a ridge overlooking a valley dotted with patches of water and scrubland. The terrain itself offers clues. Certain groves provide shelter for deer in the heat, while low-lying streams are magnets for smaller mammals. Mainstream research emphasizes that such spatial intelligence was crucial. Early humans developed detailed mental maps of their environment, noting both immediate resources and longer-term survival spots. You imagine following these maps through dense fog, over rocky ridges, and across treacherous marshes, all to ensure a consistent food supply. A fringe notion floats into your mind. Some anthropologists propose that early humans may have left subtle markers, arranged stones, notches on trees, or disturbed soil to indicate resource locations for others in the group. While concrete evidence is limited, it suggests that memory alone wasn't enough. Early hunters may have externalized knowledge, creating a primitive system of information storage. You run your fingers along a moss-covered stone, imagining a hidden code etched into its surface. You crouch near a familiar waterhole, noting the remains of previous meals, discarded bones, and plant debris. Efficient use of resources required planning beyond the hunt itself. Meat had to be dried, smoked, or cached to last during lean months. Hide and sinew were stored for clothing, tools, and shelter. Historians still argue whether such practices were consistent across regions or developed independently in isolated communities. But it's clear that foresight and preparation were essential to survival. You observe a small herd grazing at a distance. They move predictably, pausing near water, then shifting toward shaded groves. Your mind maps these movements. Today's observations will inform tomorrow's hunt, ensuring you balance effort and risk. You consider the nutritional needs of your group, prioritizing larger game for protein, smaller animals for fat and sustenance, always optimizing return on effort. By late afternoon, you sketch an imagined plan for caching food: dried meat tucked in shaded hollows, roots and tubers collected and buried to preserve moisture, and bones arranged for future tool making. This forward thinking requires both memory and imagination, integrating observations from multiple sources: terrain, prey behavior, weather patterns, and prior experience. As the sun dips toward the horizon, painting the valley in orange and pink, you reflect on the intelligence embedded in these survival strategies. Planning for the future, anticipating scarcity, and storing knowledge and resources are as crucial as spear skills or stealth. The smartest hunters were those who looked beyond immediate gratification, blending observation, memory, and foresight to ensure both personal and communal survival. The morning light filters softly through the trees, illuminating the uneven ground beneath your feet. Today, every step you take is weighed against potential danger. Risk assessment is the focus. Hunting is no longer simply a contest of speed or skill. It's a game of calculation, where every decision could mean injury, loss of food, or worse. You trudge carefully, scanning for both prey and hazards, your mind balancing reward and peril like a tightrope walker. You crouch beside a fallen log, observing a herd of deer grazing in a distant meadow. Their movements are deliberate, cautious, and patterned. Mainstream research suggests that prehistoric hunters continuously assessed risk, evaluating the size and aggression of their prey against their own strength and that of their group. You mimic this thought process, considering whether to pursue larger animals that promise more food but pose greater danger, or smaller, easier targets that yield less but reduce the chance of injury. A fringe notion surfaces. Some anthropologists speculate that early humans might have used ritualized gestures or small sacrifices to calm anxiety before attempting high-risk hunts. The evidence is thin, but the concept suggests that emotional intelligence was intertwined with physical strategy. You pause and tap a smooth stone in your hand, imagining a subtle ritual that focuses the mind and primes your instincts. You survey the terrain, noting fallen branches, slippery rocks, and hidden crevices where a misstep could cause harm. Each decision, how to approach, when to pause, which path to take, is a calculation of risk versus reward. Historians still argue whether these assessments were conscious deliberations or instinctive responses honed over generations. But the ability to anticipate danger clearly required both observation and experience. A predator's cry echoes from a nearby ridge, and the herd jumps in unison, tail high, ears alert. You freeze, noting the subtle signals, the direction of the ears, the ripple of the grass, the collective body language. Each micro-decision of the prey informs your own next move. You realize that the intelligence of early humans was not isolated. It interacted with the intelligence of animals, weather, terrain, and social companions, forming a complex web of adaptive thinking. By midday, you plan a route that maximizes potential gain while minimizing exposure. You imagine assigning roles in your group. One hunter draws attention, another flanks, a third observes escape routes. Even a solo hunt requires this level of foresight. The smartest hunters were those who constantly calculated probabilities, adapting strategies as circumstances shifted. You reflect on injuries avoided, opportunities seized, and decisions deferred. Risk assessment isn't merely caution. It's anticipation, analysis, and learning from both successes and failures. As the sun climbs higher, you feel the sharp clarity that comes from understanding not only the terrain and prey, but the broader ecosystem of danger itself. Prehistoric hunters survived not just because of speed or strength, but because their minds weighed consequences and outcomes with relentless precision. By evening, you step back from the meadow, your thoughts buzzing with scenarios, calculations, and observations. Today reinforces the truth. Intelligence in hunting is inseparable from judgment, foresight, and the ability to anticipate both opportunity and threat in equal measure. Twilight settles gently over the plains, painting everything in soft purples and golds, and you feel the familiar tension of anticipation. Tonight, your focus shifts from individual skills to group coordination, how prehistoric hunters orchestrated their efforts to achieve collective success. You imagine a small hunting party moving silently through the long grasses, each member aware of the other's position, each action contributing to a larger plan. You crouched near a rise, observing a herd of antelope grazing across the valley. Mainstream research indicates that early humans often hunted in small, coordinated groups, assigning roles based on skill, stamina, and experience. Some individuals drove prey toward ambush points, others waited in concealed positions, and scouts ensured that no predator surprised the party. You mentally position yourself in this system, noting how every movement is synchronized, almost like choreography, guided by instinct and observation. A fringe detail comes to mind. Some anthropologists suggest that hunters may have used subtle signals, claps, whistles, or shadow gestures to communicate without alerting prey. While debated, these small innovations highlight the cognitive sophistication required for coordination. You imagine a silent whistle carried across the valley, shifting the herd in the desired direction while keeping humans safely hidden. You watch the herd react to a sudden breeze, moving instinctively toward shaded groves. You notice the way leaders within the herd influence group behavior and how understanding these hierarchies could inform human strategy. Historians still argue whether prehistoric coordination was entirely intuitive or whether it relied on cultural teaching. But observing these patterns makes it clear that human intelligence was deeply social, relying on both knowledge of animals and trust in companions. The evening deepens, and you practice moving in sync with imagined partners, shifting silently from shadow to shadow, predicting the herd's direction and adjusting your pace. Each action demands awareness of multiple variables: terrain, prey behavior, wind direction, and group placement. The level of multitasking is extraordinary, reflecting mental agility far beyond mere survival instinct. By nightfall, the herd has shifted toward a narrow pass, a natural bottleneck. You visualize how prehistoric hunters would have used such topography to their advantage, positioning themselves strategically to increase success rates while minimizing effort. The combination of environmental intelligence, coordination, and foresight underscores how sophisticated hunting truly was. As the moon rises, you sit back and absorb the scene, recognizing that group hunting required a blend of observation, prediction, and silent communication. The smartest hunters weren't lone warriors. They were strategists, engineers of movement, and masters of collaboration. Every successful hunt depended not only on strength or speed, but on social intelligence and the ability to synchronize thought and action seamlessly with others. The night deepens, and a gentle wind rustles through the tall grasses, carrying the sense of distant water and grazing animals. You move quietly, attuned to every sound and shadow. Tonight, the focus is tracking and memory. How prehistoric hunters remembered patterns of movement, terrain features, and animal habits over long periods. Survival depended not only on immediate skill, but on the mind's ability to store, recall, and anticipate. You crouch near a shallow stream, observing a herd of deer that pauses to drink. Mainstream archaeology confirms that early humans maintained extensive mental maps of their environment, often remembering the location of watering holes, feeding grounds, and predator territories. You trace the herd's movements in your mind, noting which trees offer cover, which rocks break the line of sight, and where escape routes might exist. Each mental note is a piece of a complex cognitive puzzle. A fringe tidbit surfaces. Some researchers suggest that prehistoric hunters may have used natural markers, scratches on trees, stacked stones, or disturbed vegetation, to supplement memory, creating a primitive but effective system of environmental notation. Whether entirely factual or speculative, this highlights the interplay between observation, memory, and tool use in survival. You imagine running your fingers along a mossy branch, sensing the story it tells about the animals that passed by weeks ago. Historians still argue whether these memory techniques were mostly instinctive or socially taught, but watching the herd's careful rhythm makes it easy to imagine a blend. You note the spacing between animals, their feeding intervals, and even slight behavioral quirks, each observation stored for future hunting strategies. Memory isn't just recall, it's analysis, prediction, and synthesis. As you follow the herd silently, you recognize the importance of temporal patterns. Certain grazing behaviors occur only at dawn or dusk. Waterholes attract different species at different times, and predator activity shifts with moon phases. You mentally chart these cycles, understanding that success relies on the integration of multiple layers of information across time. A distant owl calls, and the herd pauses briefly, ears twitching. You adjust your path, remembering the positions of rocks, hollows, and depressions that provide cover. Each step reinforces lessons from previous hunts, demonstrating how intelligence is cumulative, building from experience and careful observation. By the early hours of morning, you retreat to a vantage point overlooking the valley. You replay the night's observations, mapping movement patterns, noting recurring behaviors, and imagining how your ancestors did the same, tracking, memorizing, and predicting for survival. Tracking is more than following footprints. It is an exercise in foresight, deduction, and the continuous updating of mental maps. As dawn begins to color the horizon, you feel the mental stretch that comes from deep observation. Prehistoric hunters combined acute sensory perception with long-term memory and anticipatory reasoning, creating a sophisticated cognitive toolkit. Survival was not merely a test of strength or speed, it was a testament to the power of the human mind, honed over countless generations, to read, remember, and predict the rhythms of life around them. The early morning mist drifts across the valley, softening the outlines of rocks and trees, and you realize today's focus is communication and signaling, how prehistoric hunters conveyed information across distance without alarming prey. Every gesture, sound, and position becomes part of a subtle language, and survival often depended on how well these signals were understood. You crouch behind a low rise, watching a herd of gazelle in the distance. Mainstream studies suggest that early humans relied on a combination of visual cues, hand signals, and low-frequency sounds to coordinate movements during a hunt. Even a slight misinterpretation could result in failure, emphasizing the importance of precise and practiced communication. You mimic a silent hand movement, imagining the herd unaware of your presence while companions adjust positions in response. A fringe notion enters your mind. Some researchers speculate that prehistoric humans might have used natural echoes, rhythmic drumming on hollow logs, or even reflective surfaces to send signals across valleys. While evidence is limited, it suggests that early humans experimented with physics and acoustics to extend their communication range. You visualize a polished stone reflecting sunlight as a covert signal, a silent yet sophisticated method of coordination. Historians still argue whether these methods were universally understood or localized to specific groups, but observing the herd's patterns makes it evident that subtle coordination could dramatically improve success. You notice how some antelope pause and shift collectively, demonstrating how sensitive prey are to unexpected cues. Another reason hunters had to master silent signaling. As you move slowly along the ridge, you simulate the timing of communication within a hunting group. One companion imitates a call to draw attention, another adjusts position silently, while you track the herd's reactions. The mental load is enormous. It demands understanding prey psychology, anticipating group actions, and synchronizing signals with precision. This isn't instinct alone. It's a conscious orchestration of multiple moving parts, a mental ballet choreographed for survival. By late morning, you observe the herd's response to environmental changes, wind direction, shade, and sounds, integrating these into your mental model. The smartest hunters would have adjusted their signals accordingly, knowing that even minor miscalculations could allow prey to escape. Coordination and communication extend beyond humans. They interact with the intelligence of animals, terrain, and time, creating a layered cognitive challenge. You rest briefly, reflecting on how such signaling fosters social intelligence as much as practical hunting skill. Understanding companions, interpreting gestures, and predicting responses requires empathy, memory, and foresight. These abilities form a mental toolkit that enhances both cooperation and individual effectiveness. As the sun reaches its peak, you step back, appreciating the complexity of communication in prehistoric hunting. Signals, gestures, and subtle cues were as vital as speed or strength. Today, survival depended not only on the individual mind, but on the collective intelligence of the group, harmonized through observation, memory, and precise signaling. A lesson in the profound sophistication of early human cognition. The afternoon sun casts long, warm shadows across the valley as you focus on adaptation and improvisation. The ability of prehistoric hunters to respond quickly to unexpected challenges. The terrain is unpredictable, prey behavior varies, and weather can shift in minutes. Survival demanded more than practiced routines. It required mental flexibility and creative problem solving. You move along a narrow ridge overlooking a herd of deer, noticing that a sudden gust of wind has carried your scent closer than anticipated. Mainstream studies indicate that early humans constantly adjusted their tactics, shifting routes, repositioning hunters, or changing attack methods in response to unpredictable elements. You imagine dropping low behind a boulder, recalculating your approach in real time, mirroring the adaptability required thousands of years ago. A fringe tidbit comes to mind. Some researchers suggest that prehistoric hunters may have used decoys, imitating animal calls or using carved effigies, to redirect prey or test their reactions. While the evidence is speculative, it highlights the early human capacity for improvisation and creative strategy. You whisper a soft mimic of a deer call and watch in your mind's eye how the herd reacts, thinking about the blend of psychology and ingenuity needed to execute such a tactic successfully. Historians still argue whether improvisation was an individual skill or cultivated through social learning, but the interplay of observation, creativity, and experience suggests both. You note small details, the tilt of a head, a sudden movement in the grass, the glint of water reflecting sunlight. Each factor can alter the hunt, and the smartest hunters adapted without hesitation. By evening, clouds gather, threatening sudden rain. You plan alternative strategies, finding natural cover, using terrain to funnel prey, or retreating to safer ground. This adaptive thinking requires both immediate judgment and foresight, considering not only the prey, but the environment and the tools at your disposal. The cognitive demands are immense, blending memory, analysis, and predictive modeling. You pause to examine broken branches and footprints, mentally testing different approaches. Every scenario is a rehearsal in improvisation. What if the herd scatters? What if a predator appears? You mentally practice reactions, calibrating timing, speed, and coordination. The smartest hunters didn't just react, they anticipated multiple possibilities and prepared contingencies for each. As night falls, you reflect on the day's lessons. Adaptation is more than survival. It's intelligence in action, the dynamic interplay of observation, creativity, and flexible strategy. Prehistoric hunters thrived not merely because they were strong or fast, but because they could improvise, respond to change, and innovate continuously in a world that offered no guarantees. The landscape, the prey, and the weather became partners in a constantly evolving mental game, and mastery of this game defined the truly skilled hunter. Night falls again, soft and velvety, and you focus on reflection and learning from experience. How prehistoric hunters honed their skills through repeated observation, trial, and adjustment. Tonight, the hunt is mental as much as physical. You replay past decisions, analyze outcomes, and internalize lessons for future endeavors. Survival was an ongoing education, requiring introspection as much as action. You sit on a gentle slope, watching shadows stretch across the valley. Mainstream research highlights that early humans learned not just from success, but from failure. Each missed strike, misread track, or startled herd provided critical data. You imagine cataloging these lessons in your mind, the angle of approach that worked, the timing that failed, and the subtle environmental cues that made the difference. This is intelligence in continuous feedback, a mental archive guiding future action. A fringe idea enters your mind. Some anthropologists speculate that early humans may have used symbolic reflection, such as arranging stones or leaving marks, to remember lessons or signal caution to others. While evidence is limited, the concept underscores a sophisticated awareness of cause and effect, memory, and communal learning. You run your fingers over a smooth rock, imagining it as a mnemonic device encoding survival knowledge. Historians still argue whether reflection was a conscious, structured process or more intuitive, but both approaches likely contributed to the refinement of hunting strategies. You replay scenarios in your mind, adjusting variables, prey type, weather, wind, companion positioning, and timing. Each mental simulation sharpens judgment and decision-making skills, preparing you for future challenges. The valley hums with life. Insects chirp softly, a distant predator calls, and the herd grazes without suspicion. You reflect on how attention to minor details, footprints, broken twigs, scent carried on the wind, shapes understanding. Each observation is stored in memory, adding depth to intuition and reinforcing patterns that will inform future hunts. This iterative learning process shows that intelligence is both adaptive and cumulative, evolving across seasons and generations. By midnight, you consider group memory and knowledge transfer. Prehistoric hunters likely shared insights around fires, combining observation, storytelling, and demonstration. This collective reflection amplified individual experience, ensuring that lessons were retained and refined within the community. Social cognition intertwined with practical skill, creating a robust system of shared intelligence. As the night deepens, you feel the subtle expansion of your own awareness. Hunting isn't merely physical, it is observation, calculation, adaptation, and reflection. Each encounter, whether successful or not, contributes to a growing mental map of both environment and prey. Prehistoric intelligence was as much about the mind as the body, an ever-deepening understanding of the natural world and one's place within it. The world around you softens as the night stretches on, shadows melting into gentle darkness. You feel the weight of the day's observations settle into your mind, each detail of terrain, prey behavior, and hunting strategy folding quietly into memory. There is a calm in knowing that every step, every pause, and every decision you imagined or enacted mirrors the thoughtfulness of those who came before you, hunters, whose intelligence shaped survival itself. Breathe slowly and let the scenes drift away like mist across the valley. The rustle of leaves, the snap of twigs, the faint glint of a stone in moonlight, all these moments now fade into a tapestry of understanding, a reminder that intelligence is as much about patience, awareness, and reflection as it is about action. You are no longer chasing, tracking, or anticipating. You are simply absorbing, letting the lessons sink in and nourish your sense of connection to those ancient minds. Imagine the generations of humans who observed, learned, and taught, passing wisdom like a river flowing through time. Their world was unpredictable and often harsh, yet they thrived through cleverness, foresight, and cooperation. Every spear, every footstep, every silent gesture was a testament to the profound capabilities of the human mind. Tonight, you glimpse the threads that bind past hunters to your own curiosity and imagination, a quiet lineage of thought stretching back tens of thousands of years. Now, let your own senses relax, your heartbeat slow, and the tension of the day's imagined hunt dissipate. The terrain flattens, the herds vanish, and the wind carries only soft whispers. You are left with the quiet satisfaction of understanding, the gentle acknowledgement of human ingenuity, and the comforting knowledge that intelligence has always been a living, breathing companion. Drift slowly into rest, letting these reflections cradle your mind, softening every thought. The night is calm, the lessons remain, and now you can let sleep take over, peaceful and deep, carrying you gently toward tomorrow.